Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Our bilateral meeting between Taiwan and Australia will begin shortly. Please download the link in the chat box of WebEx to download the slides. And for all our speakers, please turn on your camera and remember to turn on your microphone as well. We would like to invite our speakers to come up to the stage and take your seat. So, Executive Director Xie of the Recycling Fund Management Board of EPA is already on the stage. We also have Deputy Representative Brent Moore of the Australian office on the stage. Now we would like to welcome Mr. Chen Junming to come up to the stage, as well as CEO Cai Chunyao of Dafuhe, and also Special Assistant to the Chairman of FGD, Mr. Paul Xu, and also Mr. Nick Zhao, Assistant Manager of Oriental Green Materials Limited. Also, we would like to invite Director Eugene Lin of APO, as well as Director of the Center for Green Economy of CIER to come up to the stage. So our event will begin in 2 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the online bilateral meeting between Taiwan and Australia, cooperation in recycling and circular economy of plastics. Australia has rolled out several policies on waste, such as full ban on waste export, including plastic waste by 2024. So Australia has attempted to improve its recycling capability, and there are plenty of opportunities for collaboration between our two countries. Over the past year, we have a lot of cooperation, and to deepen the collaboration at the IEMN annual meeting this morning, we have invited Mr. Warren Overton, CEO of Australia and New Zealand Recycling Platform, to share with us the circular economy policy and e-waste management in Australia. In the afternoon session, we have invited experts from Taiwan and Australia to talk about recycling and circular economy of plastics. First of all, we're honored to have invited Counselor and Executive Director of the Recycling Fund Management Board of EPAROC, Mr. Binghui Xie, to give us the opening remarks.
谢
Please.
谢大家。我们澳洲办事处莫伯人副代表，各位贵宾，大家午安。
Deputy Representatives Mr. Brent Moore of Australian Office, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
首先呢，非常荣幸能代表台湾环保署欢迎各位参与今天这场台澳双边线上会议。只要针对塑胶回收跟循环经济，包括从政策、产业发展、技术等各方面来进行交流。
It is my honor to represent Taiwan EPA and welcome everyone to Australian-Taiwan bilateral virtual meeting on plastic. I look forward to the discussion on plastic, circular economy, policy, and industry development.
我们都知道废弃物转成再生资源达成零废弃的循环经济，那这是目前全球掀起热潮的一个商业的一个现象。那循环经济重视资源的使用效率，并且设法以更少的资源来创造更多的价值。台湾呢，因为能源跟资源都十分的有限，所以才能不断累积出许多资源回收的生活智慧，成为资源循环再利用的研发能量， 进而带动创新循环经济的价值与动能。那在发展循环经济上呢，虽然是资源上的限制，可是也因为这些限制就造成了我们在这方面以及一个领域有一些的优势。
Turning waste into renewable resource, achieving zero waste, the concept of circular economy has become the latest trend across the world. Circular economy values the efficiency of resource utilization and attempts to create more value from less resources. Because Taiwan has limited energy and natural resources, we were able to establish many recycling technologies and experiences. And this has become the basis of our recycling research and development, which is the biggest advantage for Taiwan in circular economy.
台湾环保署从1997年开始推动资源回收4合一计划，打造垃圾分类的道德观经过多年的推动，除了造就台湾自己本身高回收率与环保意识，那同时也奠定回收再造静脉产业的基础。
Taiwan EPA began promoting the 4-in-1 recycling program since 1997 and laid the groundwork of waste separation. After 2 decades, we finally have achieved a high recycling rate and a great awareness for environmental protection among the public. Furthermore, a great network of recycling channels were established.
随着废弃物回收再生利用的循环路径的发展与形成，那我们陆续实施许多先进的环保政策，包括垃圾会随袋征收，然后先用一次性的塑胶吸管等等。利用4合一的回收基金，精进回收处理的体系，也协助推动资源回收再制的产业。
As the roadmap for circular economy become more visible, Taiwan EPA also implemented other policies such as pay per bag trash collection, ban of single-use plastic straws, and efficiently utilize recycling fee collected through the 4-in-1 recycling program to further refine the recycling industry and promote renewable resource production.
台湾有良好的资源回收产业，那以塑胶回收循环利用而言，我们的塑胶再生技术相当的成熟，废塑胶经由再生程序重新制造力，那制成再生的力料，借用这些力料可以进一步再制成塑胶制品来循环利用，那这样的应用的层面呢，相当的广泛。
I do believe Taiwan has a really mature recycling industry. Let's take plastic recycling, for example. Our technology is well developed, and we can take waste plastic and turn into renewable plastic material that can be further manufactured into all kinds of products.
现在呢，台湾已经有让世界肯定的资源回收制度，那同时呢，民间也具有高技术能量，那循环经济的成功结合动静脉产业，创造环境资源双赢的经济活动。这个也是台湾在世界上的强项之一。
Now, Taiwan has a recycling program that is well known to the world, and the private sector possesses great technology capacity. Circular economy has successfully connected all aspects of the industry and create a win-win scenario for both environment and resources.
我想这次活动不仅延续国际环保合作交流的目的，那更重要的是，我们可以跟大家分享我们的技术，那提供我们的经验，也可以互相交流。那如果大家觉得台湾这样一个资源再生的技术是可以应用到贵国去，那我们也很愿意把这样的一个技术推广出去。那大家一起努力来共同实践环境永续的经营理念。
I believe today's event will allow us to share with you our technology experience and accomplishment. If you think Taiwan's recycling technology could be a service to Australia, we will be more than happier to provide further assistance. We hope to work with you and achieve the goal of sustainable development.
最后呢，感谢大家今天的参与，那也希望大家能够继续保持平安健康。那在未来持续推动的区域合作上，也希望大家要 能够继续投入热情跟专业，那展现丰富的成果。那最后呢，还是再一次的谢谢大家。
Once again, thank you all for attending our event today. I wish you all a good health and success in your future. Thank you. 好，我们谢谢谢执秘的致辞
We'd
哦
like。to thank Executive Director Xie for his remarks. Next, we would like to welcome Mr. Brent Moore, Deputy Representative and Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner of Australian Office Taipei, to give us a few remarks.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to help open the afternoon session, and I'd like to thank you, Councillor and Executive Director Xie, for your very kind words this afternoon. I would also like to acknowledge the ongoing support of the CIER and the EPA, who I'm very pleased that we can continue to promote bilateral circular economy trade and investment, building on our cooperation over the last several years. Fostering a healthy circular economy is a national priority for the Australian government. Our National Waste Policy Action Plan sets overarching directions for action on waste management and recycling in Australia until 2030. Within it is a goal of 80% resource recovery rate from all waste streams and to reduce total waste generated per person by 10%. This includes the phasing out of problematic and unnecessary plastics by 2025 by measures such as reducing single-use plastics and treating and cleaning up plastic litter. We will refrain from using harmful plastic items that pollute our environment. The Australian government has also committed multiple sources of financial funds to support the circular economy goal. This includes $190 million for the Recycling Modernisation Fund and the $100 million Australian Recycling Investment Fund. This is supported by additional sources of funding from our state and territory governments. In August of 2019, the Australian government established a timetable to ban the export of waste paper, plastic, glass, tyres, while building Australia's internal capacity to generate high-value recycled commodities. Mixed plastics were banned in July of 2021, with cleaned and baled PET bottles being banned from July next year. Australia is seeking technologies and investments to bridge the supply chain gap and to develop research and development on circular economy. Circular economy remains a focus for the Australian office here in Taipei, and we welcome the interests of anyone in the audience today who would like to make contact with us to discuss how we can support them. Finally, I'd just like to acknowledge that we have three terrific Australian speakers who will share their experience today. And we're also joined on this stage by the Chare Sustainable Plastic Company, part of Taiwan's Mingfu Group, who have established a successful partnership in Western Australia to recycle waste plastics, and is an outstanding example of what's possible between Australia and Taiwan. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I hope you enjoy today's event.
Thank you to the remarks. And now we would like to invite our speakers on the stage, as well as our participants online, to have a photo call. We would like to invite all of the speakers to stand up. So our participants online, please turn on your camera. Now it's time for a photo call. So we're going to have the screenshots. So now our staff is going to get the screenshot. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, for the second photo, please give us your thumbs up. 3, 2, 1. Thumbs up. So now our staff is trying to get the screenshot. All right, thank you very much. Please return to your seat.
Before we proceed, we would like to remind everyone to please be aware of the time limits. And next, we're going to invite Ms. Gail Sloan, CEO of Waste Management and Resource Recovery Association of Australia, to share with us. Please.
Thank you for having me here today. Just confirming you can hear me. Yes. Excellent. Thanks, Marcus. All right, I'm going to talk very quickly and build on what we heard at the beginning about Australian policy around plastics, more broadly than e-waste, but plastics generally. So next slide. In Australia, and just if you could double click, that would be great because there's a bit of a thing in there. In Australia, we generate 74 million tonnes of waste each year, and of that, about 3.5 million tonnes is plastic. I love the opening comment about making a renewable resource through plastic, and I guess that's what Australia is very determined to do. Next click. Next week, yeah. Just interesting aside, and I don't know if you've similarly looked at this. We have a national waste report every 2 years, and this year was the first year that we looked at total waste generation, not just what we manage through traditional collection systems. And we realised that in Australia, due to other things like mining and agriculture, we actually generate in excess of 600 million tonnes of material each year through waste, but we are only actually managing 74 million tonnes at present. So that's a pretty scary picture in my mind about resources that could be better used and better looked after if we're talking about a circular economy. So lots of opportunity. Next slide, please. Our recovery rates in Australia, and very interesting to hear EPA talk at the beginning, are good, not great. As mentioned, we are aiming for an 80% resource recovery by 2030. Currently, our national average is 62%, and you're about to see that plastic is way worse than that. We do have a lot of intervention and support for household and curbside and bin separation. We're also very good with construction and demolition, but we're not very good with things like C&I, commercial and industrial, which has also got quite a lot of plastic in it, which we'll see a bit later. So state by state, we have quite different standards. And generally the states, not the federal government, are key in this policy area, but post 2018, China's national sword policy and the inability or the challenges of exporting overseas, bearing in mind that those were commodities going off to be remanufactured, and Australia didn't have that industry. We've seen a significant shift in the federal government involvement in our industry. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit of snapshot about what we do. You can see from the diagram on the right, the Sankey diagram, that we did and we do continue to have a reliance on exporting in Australia. I think from memory, even with the export ban, we're still looking about 4 million tonnes of material going over offshore, predominantly steel at this time and metals, textiles, and a proportion of plastics. So, we are very determined to grow our own circular economy in Australia. We're very determined to do the job multiplier, create onshore jobs. We're also very determined to, some of us, to address carbon and carbon mitigation. So we see our industry as a great opportunity for investment in Australia. Next slide. So I know this slide is hard to read, but we have some great data in Australia around plastic production and consumption. This gives you a really strong view or understanding of what type of plastic is produced and used in Australia and where the opportunities lie, I guess. We have an awful lot in packaging. I think it's about 2 million tonnes between business to business and business to consumer, and the rest is in very different types of industries across the board, cars, electronic waste, agriculture. So there's a huge opportunity to do more with the plastics we produce and think about it differently. We haven't embraced well in Australia as yet principles around design and circularity and product stewardship when it comes to plastic. So that is a great opportunity for us from a policy point of view, but at least we've got good data about what we want to do. Next slide. This just highlights the challenge we've got with plastic. This comes from a survey that is done biannually from memory. Currently, we're recycling 11.5% of plastic, and there's a heavy reliance, about 50% of that is actually done overseas and not in Australia. So when this was done in 2018-19, prior to the introduction of the export bans, you could say that our investment in our industry was very low and very challenging. So finding recycled plastic as input is not an easy thing to do in Australia. We do not have a lot of the policy levers that drive that. For example, the use of recycled content in packaging. There is no tax on virgin, for example. So 2018-19, a long way to go as far as onshore packaging production, repackaging production. Next slide. This just shows some recovery rates, and you're very welcome to see these after. I won't dwell on these, but needless to say that it's nowhere near as high as it could be. We have challenges with collecting some of this stream. We have still way too much material in lower value packaging, lower value polymers that we know internationally are not the preferred polymers. We need to do more to move towards the HDPE, PET, polypropylene and LDPE to enable the capturing. The National Plastics Plan is actually proposing elimination of PVC and EPS, which is a great start, but we have more to go. Next slide. We'll just keep going with that one. Can you just keep pressing? Sorry, didn't realise that was in there. As mentioned before, 2019, federal and states got together and looked at how we could improve our whole waste and recycling, waste and resource recovery sector in Australia. And we actually have got an updated national waste plan. Before that, we hadn't had any sort of policy direction since 2014. First and foremost, given the concern about the quality of material that was going offshore post-China, the federal government, with their colleagues in the states, advocated for and agreed to an export ban on low-value material going offshore. So that has been one of the main areas of focus for the last 2 years by government, as well as the moving towards the 80% diversion or resource recovery and the reduction per capita. We are on this path. I would say we're still quite a long way to go, so there's a lot of opportunity. If you just go to next slide. This is the time frame for the plastic ban on our product. In July this year, 1 July, we no longer can from Australia export mixed plastics at all. We can only export single resin bales of plastics. At this stage, they don't have to be processed and reprocessed into pellet or flake, but we can only export those that are pure bales of material that make a very high contamination standard, ISRI or other specification with a clear market. We need to have a license from the federal government in order to export this material to enable the tracking, and we need to demonstrate there's a clear buyer. So our government is very determined to grow jobs and opportunities in Australia and ensure that we're not actually exporting low value material. We're currently working on the tyres ban implementation, and that comes in December. Next year, mid-next year, we will only be able to export value-added plastics. So again, single polymer resin that have been either pelletized or flaked and have a clear buyer. So very big transition for us. Around about 300 to 500,000 tonnes of plastic was going offshore prior to the Chinese national sword. So we've had to pivot quite rapidly towards onshore investment, which we had some of. We had probably 2 or 3 recycled PET plants for food grade prior to the ban, but now we've got a significant amount of investment. I'll just quickly touch on that and then hand over to Marcus, who's going to deep dive. So last slide, please. Federal government brought in an act in October last year that made it very clear that set up the framework for the exporting and the licensing schedule and a process. So that's an online portal that you can actually have a look at and see the requirements of. So that's all now in legislation, and also those who've got license holders in the event that you are looking to purchase material. It's publicly identified who has got the approval to take the material offshore. So that's all public and transparent. And just last slide, I believe. So as long with, and as mentioned before, the federal government and the states put significant investment into what they've called the Recycling Modernisation Fund. It's 160 million from the states, from the federal government, which has been matched by industry and the state governments, making a total of $600 million nationally. That's going towards investment for the purpose of paper, tyres, glass and plastic, all of which are subject to the ban. The states have all entered into agreements, and the vast majority, other than Queensland, have currently awarded project funding for almost the 600 million in total. So they are looking at, in the plastic sphere, a lot of investment in facilities that are doing food grade PET, HDPE. We're seeing a lot more of source separation of polypropylene, and we are actually seeing a significant investment in mixed plastics, probably going more to industrial purposes than food grade. So Australia is really trying to meet its 70% recycling rate for plastics, which it set itself for by 2025. And also we've set ourselves an average recycled content of 20% for plastics by 2025. So we're accelerating that investment in order to ensure that we're also hopefully creating that renewable resource in plastic. So thank you. I'll hand over to Marcus.
Thank you, Gail, for your presentation. And now we're going to invite Mr. Marcus Giesler, CEO of Eastern Metropolitan Regional Council, also former Chairman, Waste Authority of Western Australia, to give us his presentation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And thank you, Gail. The next slide. So Australia has some real specific challenges. Australia is a continent, is a big country. And here on this slide, I just wanted to illustrate is that this is Europe superimposed over Australia, and there's vast distances. And we have 25 million residents here, a population similar to Taiwan. If you overlay Australia over the United States, this is what it looks like. And next, and if you overlay, can you go back? If you overlay Taiwan over Australia, then it shows how immense it is. Next slide. So in Australia in 1996, and some of this information comes from the report Gail was referring to, the national report on waste. In 1996, generation was almost 23 million tons, and the majority of that went to landfill. Only 7% was recycled. 25 years later, so in 2019, generation was 54 million tons, so that's an increase of 250%. And the recovery rate is 56%, and still 21 million tons, almost 28 million tons went to landfill. The 2030 projections are the generation will be 70 million tons because of population growth and an increase of waste generation. And the targets in the new strategy, in the federal strategy, is 80% recovery and only 14 million tons to landfill, so less landfill and more recovery. So that means that recycling recovery will be 56 million tons. And that's where the opportunity comes in for industry, because we have to grow the recycling industry by 24 million tons in the next 9 years. So that's a big challenge, but also an opportunity, obviously. Next slide. Gail already touched on it. So there's a lot of initiatives happened over the last couple of years. The federal government came up with the Recycling and Waste Reduction Act, and there's a lot of documents out there: National Waste Policy, Sustainable Procurement Guide, Circular Economy Roadmap for Plastics, a draft National Soil Strategy. I thought was interesting because there's a focus on organics as well, as we have to look after our soils if we really truly want to become sustainable and circular. There's a national plastic plan, there's a modern manufacturing strategy, and there's an harmonization announcement in April this year that all state governments have agreed to have a similar collection system. So similar bins, similar bin lid color coding. So harmonization will make it easier to communicate and consistent messaging to the community. Next slide. So we see harmonization in waste and resource recovery throughout the country. Next, thanks. But the problem is no one is really made responsible, accountable, not at federal level, not at state level, not at local level. So that will be a challenge going forward in Australia. Next slide. Just want to touch quickly on extended producer responsibility product stewardship. So there's 3 approaches in Australia. There's voluntary accredited schemes, co-regulatory schemes, and mandatory schemes. And really the government initiated schemes that are the only ones that really work. And there was one launched for oil in 2000, which has a great return rate. Next slide. Now, on plastics, this is an overview of what the different states are doing on plastics. And these are the 10 single-use plastics that the states want to address. And the bottom line is the container deposit schemes in the various states. Next click. In 2018, 3.4 million tons. Oh, sorry, can you go back? In 2018, and Gail already touched it in her overview, the 3.4 million tons of plastics was produced, manufactured in Australia, and only 4% was recycled. The plan is to make recycling 50% by 2030. Next slide. Now, what happens to all our secondary raw materials that actually recovered? So the right bar is what is processed onshore, and the left bar is what is exported. And you see that plastics, there was a dip in 2019 when China sword came into place, and it dropped to 100,000 tons in plastics. But only 48% is exported, but only 10% of all plastic generated, 393,000 tons, is actually recovered. The other 90% still goes to landfill. Next slide. Now, why are we doing this ecosystem thinking? Everything we do is either to produce energy, is to make our food, or support the systems we need for us to live. And we take in materials, virgin materials, and we emit and we waste on the other side. We have to really start mimicking Mother Nature and making sure that we have ecosystem and resilience in the system. And we have to build a natural capital, produce capital, and social and human capital. In Australia, if you look at the paradigm on the shift, we see that we only started to talk about waste prevention now, and a little bit on resource efficiency, talking about the circular economy. And this is circular economy focus, but we really have to move to a green economy focus that include human well-being and ecosystem resilience. Next slide. So in Western Australia, we launched when I was the chairman, we launched the War Strategy 2030, and combined with that, we also had an action plan. Next. Oh, sorry. We have 3 objectives: avoid, recover, and protect. And in the recover section, I just want to highlight, this is about material recovery. This is not about energy recovery. Energy recovery is not counted in the recovery rate. So it's about really recovering the materials and reusing them as secondary raw materials. Next slide. Gail already touched on it. So this is the implementation and the dates: glass, mixed plastic, tires, single resin polymers, plastics, mixed cardboard, and unsorted paper, and the ban dates. And in Western Australia, the state government and federal government, they already announced that they going to support the industry with $60 million for plastic infrastructure, $90 million for tire infrastructure, and $30 million for fiber, for paper and cardboard. Next slide. Other things happening in Western Australia is the container deposit system since October last year, a recovery of 55% currently. There's 1.3 billion containers in Western Australia annually. There's a single-use plastic ban, which is being fast-tracked. It's not 2024 anymore in Western Australia, but it's going to happen this year and next year. And we're doing a lot of capacity building in circular economy. So our organization, the EMRC, just held a masterclass in June. Next slide. So what does a circular economy in Western Australia look like? So we want to inform, connect, and transform. And the outcome of the masterclass is we formed Circular Economy Western Australia, and we put together a bit of a roadmap. So if you want to be involved and if you want to connect with the organization, please register on www.siwa.com.au, because we want to be the circular hub going forward. Next slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus, for your sharing. And next, we're going to invite Mr. Ruben Gisler, Purchase Manager from Cherry Sustainable Plastic Company. Please.
Me all right? Good. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the plastics recycling facility we're setting up in Western Australia, us being Cherry Sustainable Plastic. Next slide, please. So first, I'll just touch on who we are. So Ming Fu Group, they are our parent company in Taiwan. They have a lot of operations in the circular economy industry in Taiwan, all the way from operating MRFs to solar panel recycling, waste to energy, end-of-life vehicles, batteries, many different materials that they cover. And in 2018, they established CHIRE to investigate the Australian market to start sourcing plastics to have recyclables to reprocess. And CHIRE is set up as a majority-owned Australian organisation in Queensland. And now we're actually setting up a facility here in Western Australia. Next slide, please. So I'll just briefly touch on the situation in Australia. I know previous speakers have mentioned it. So there's about 130,000 tonnes of plastic recyclables which are exported from Australia overall. We have a lot of planned capacity, but currently there's very limited capacity available to recover plastics. And a very troublesome material stream is going to be contaminated plastics, being what we refer to as mixed plastics here in Australia. And this has left us previously very reliant on foreign reprocessors in Asia. In terms of where it's going, it's mostly Malaysia and in Indonesia. And as we export, it's caused very insecure export markets due to the changing nature of the regulatory landscape in these countries. But there's been a lot of changes, and now the waste export ban has actually come into effect. Next slide, please. So with the current situation, there's been two main initiatives the Australian government's undertaken. The first is the COAG waste export ban, which is the Council of Australian Governments. And this demonstrates a change in Australia's policy to increase its domestic recycling capacity and also its recovery rate, as nationally it's around 10 or 11% for plastics. And our recovery rate here in Western Australia is only 5.4%. So by having the onshore, we're going to be able to hopefully recover more now that we see it as a recyclable rather than just a commodity to be exported or a problem to be exported. Now exporters, they require a license for any recyclable plastic, and we have to declare it. Previously, all that was required was you had to have just a competitive price, and then the material recovery facility would supply you with the material. Now you have to have a license, and you have to demonstrate that you will properly take care of the material, and that there will not be bad environmental outcomes from you receiving it. So the first stage is that mixed polymers have been banned as of July this year, and next year single polymers will be affected by the ban. Next slide, please. The other initiative the Australian government has undertaken is the Recycling Modernisation Fund. So the RMF is going to leverage over $600 million in investment into the recycling infrastructure in Australia. In Western Australia, $35 million has been allocated to tyres and plastics recycling. And we've been the fortunate recipient of $5.6 million in this. And with that, we're going to be developing a facility that's going to be able to take in just about all the plastics here in Western Australia. Next slide, please. So previously, the waste flow was that there were 3 major material recovery facilities here in Western Australia, and then also our container deposit scheme operator, Worrell. They would supply material to a broker. The broker sometimes will then on-sell to an additional broker, and then from there it will go to a foreign reprocessor, most likely in Malaysia or Indonesia, and then the material will be remanufactured. The model, what we're moving towards now, is that the MRFs and the container deposit scheme operator would supply us, the recycler. Then we create a flaked or pelletized product, and then this will be provided towards a manufacturer. So we're reusing plastics, so there's going to be less reliance on virgin material. Next slide, please. Now, our relationship with the MRFs and the container deposit scheme operator is quite strong in a commercial sense. They are very supportive of a new model where they deal with just one local partner, as previously they were reliant completely on brokers purchasing their recyclables and exporting this to a higher bidder in Southeast Asia. This wasn't ideal for them, but it was the only option that was available to them, as there wasn't any significant onshore capacity. And anyone that's had anything to do with shipping in the past year and a half knows how much the industry has come to embrace and struggles. So we are not a large fan of shipping at the moment, and we've really cut back on the material which we are purchasing and exporting to Taiwan. And the MRFs, they've definitely felt that as well from the brokers. At some points, we were purchasing about 80% of the PET and HEP from WA and exporting this to our Taiwanese facility, Darfur. Next slide, please. So the scope of our project is that we're going to be setting up several different lines to encompass different material streams here in Western Australia. So we're going to be sorting 6,000 tonnes of mixed plastics per year. We're going to also have the capacity for 6,000 tonnes of HEP, which will flake and pelletize, 6,000 tonnes of PET, which will flake and pelletize, and 3,000 tonnes of polypropylene. We're going to develop a site in the short term just through a lease for 5 years, just so we can expedite the delivery of this project. And in tandem with this, we're also going to be developing a long-term facility. Next slide, please. So initially, we've done a lot of market research and have come to understand what the needs are from all the relevant stakeholders here in Western Australia. And now with the advent of us receiving the $5.6 million grant from state and federal government, we're now locked into a timeline. So the timeline for the delivery of the facility is that by the end of this year, we will have a mixed plastic sorting line and also a polypropylene flaking line. By the end of next year, we're going to have a PET flaking line and a HEP flaking line. And the year after that, we're going to have a PET pelletizing line and HEP pelletizing line. It would be ideal to have everything ready at the same time, but we can only have capacity ready for when we actually expect to receive it. And as the export ban came in earlier this year for mixed plastics, we're quite certain that we will be receiving all the mixed plastics now. And next year, we expect to receive all the HEP and PET. If we would have had a facility set up several years ago, we would not have been able to secure the material needed to justify the facility, as it was at the time, the nature in the market was that the MRF supplied the brokers. As the brokers, they were always able to get a better price overseas from offshore recyclers in say, Indonesia or Malaysia, where they have a different regulatory environment. Next slide, please. So our progress to date is that we've got a very strong commercial relationship with all of our suppliers, that being Worrell, Cleanaway, Suez, and the SMRC. We've imported over $1 million of machinery, which we're storing in a single facility here in Western Australia. Our directors and technicians are arriving Q4 this year to assemble the machinery. We've got a plethora of interest from a lot of different onshore manufacturers, as originally we expected any recycled material to join our streams from our existing customers that we developed through from Mingfu. But it looks like all the material will not only just stay onshore here in Australia, but we'll actually be able to supply local manufacturers here in Western Australia. And we've also received 3 grants from state governments and federal government to help with the delivery of this facility. The first one was for a mixed plastics sorting trial, and this was to set up a basic mixed plastics sorting line, and from there we'd be able to see what is exactly inside the mixed plastics from the MRFs, and as well of how a line can actually get the most amount of value from these streams. The second grant we received was for $200,000 for an optical sorter that will be in our plastics recycling facility, and in February it was announced that we were successful for the Recycling Modernisation Fund for $5.6 million. Next slide, please. So the end result for Western Australia is that we're not going to be reliant on other nations or even eastern states for our plastics recycling. Just about all of our capacity here in WA will be able, just about all the plastics we produce here in WA will be able to be recycled by us as a single facility. As I mentioned beforehand, shipping is a bit of a disaster at the moment, and everyone is definitely looking for local solutions in the supply chain. And with us receiving waste locally, recycling it locally, and then supplying it to a local customer, there's a definite increase in the resilience of the supply chain. Adding on to that, it's an improved model for MRFs. They will benefit from this greatly as well. For them, they've always relied on trust that other recyclers in Southeast Asia would dispose of waste plastics correctly, and it's evident that that's not always the case. With us being able to recycle here locally, they can just drive to our facility and see that everything is done everything's up to best practice. And by recycling it onshore, there's also going to be a change of perception from seeing plastic scrap as a resource rather than just a waste. If we're exporting it, it just seems like it's a problem we're exporting, and we're just trying to alleviate that issue. By recycling onshore, we can have school tours, we can show the general public what the recycling process actually looks like. And from this facility, just direct, there's going to be 75 jobs created, and from this, we also expect a network effect of other jobs being created. And there's also promotes the transition towards a circular economy by recycling onshore. And as I mentioned previously, by us not exporting to recyclers in Indonesia and Malaysia mainly, we will solve the negative environmental impacts. From here, we'll be able to control the entire process of where any disposed end-of-life plastics will be going. Next slide, please. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Please leave the questions towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you to our speaker. And now we're going to invite the industry experts from Taiwan. First, we would like to invite Mr. Chen Yao-Cai, CEO of Dafuhe Resources Generation. Dafuhe Resources Generation is part of Mingfu Group, which has expanded into Australia and achieved great results. Now we would like to welcome Mr. Cai to give us the presentation. Good afternoon. I'm the CEO of Dafuhe Resources Generation. My name is Chen Yao-Cai. It's my honor to be in today's meeting. So on behalf of Dafuhe, I would like to talk about circular economy so that we can create a win-win situation for economy and the environment. Over the past decades, global business development falls under the context of linear economy. In order to drive consumption, the manufacturers have continued to create new products, and consumers are used to replacing old products with ones. So we have seen a depletion of resources, and all sorts of waste have been created. Actually, we know resources will be depleted in the future and waste will not just disappear. So the traditional linear economy will not be viable anymore. Instead, we need to focus on circular economy. So circular economy is based on a continuous recycling of resources. Based on the economic development, we can focus on each stage of the process of the economy, for example, recycling, remanufacturing, and refurbishing, reusing, and maintenance and sharing, so we can create a cycle of resource products and renewable resources so that we can generate as little waste as possible, so that we can achieve the goal of zero waste, and we can reduce the Earth's resource consumption and pollution. So this will be the new trend around the world. Taiwan has been through the era of rapid economic development, but we also have paid a price because of overexploitation, and our natural environment has been compromised. To strike a balance between economy and environment, and also to create a win-win situation and to be in line with the international community, President Tsai has declared that we should let Taiwan enter the era of recycling economy and convert waste into renewable resources. So the government has promoted the 5+2 industrial innovation policy. Through comprehensive law, improvement of technology, and good governance, we'll be able to create a good balance. And also we can promote resource recycling. And we hope that while we're able to focus on recycling and also to turn the waste into resources so that we can replace the exploitation of natural resources so that we can achieve the goal of zero waste. So the focus includes comprehensive baseline for resources and also to have a better understanding of the use of raw materials, to have an overhaul of the resources, and also to increase the efficiency and recycling rate so that the materials can be more enduring and they can be more circular and easier to recycle. So the from cradle to cradle concept will help us circulate the resources again and again so that the manufacturers can be encouraged that the products will be more environmental friendly, and by obtaining the certification, then the manufacturers can enjoy a benefit or the subsidies for their recycling. And we also want to improve the symbiosis of the industrial chain to improve energy and resource efficiency so that we can reduce the generation of waste. Also, we want to create a green consumption model and reduce the use of disposable products, and to strengthen education and outreach program. We want to reduce the use of single waste cups, to limit the use of disposable products such as the packaging, drinking water, or plastic bags, or disposable tableware. We need to ban the use of these products. So we need to have a demo project to reuse the products, and we need to reduce the waste from the source. Also, we want to promote government green procurement, public constructions through the renewable methods. So during the government's procurement projects, we can, the manufacturers having obtained the certification will have the priority. So we understand the total procurement project reached the amount of 9 billion NT dollars in 2020. And we believe that after burning the waste in the incinerators, the residues can be recycled into pellets and to be used as materials. So we hope that we can reach 70% of the recycled pellets for the public projects. Also, in the cities and counties around Taiwan, we're using these recycled materials. And we want to lengthen the lifetime of the products and provide better repair and warranty. So by providing these kind of after-sales services, then we can help lengthen the life cycle of the products. And we also need to focus on the ownership of the products so that we can promote the EPR system. That is, the manufacturers have to show their responsibility of recycling, reuse, or disposal of products after use. We also need to strengthen the recycling system. In the front stage, we need to have better categorization, and we need to upgrade the recycling, and also to strengthen the recycling technology for the packaging products. For example, the construction waste or the key metal materials should be recycled. We also help the development of the emerging industries. And to promote recycling, we need to have proper categorization of the products so that we can effectively address the problem of waste. We also can cut down the exploitation of raw materials by having comprehensive regulations and laws. We can review them, and we can promote the resource recycling and reuse. Also, we want to have a supervisory mechanism. We need to have a comprehensive measure to strengthen our R&D capability for recycling. So recycling and circular economy will be important parts of our policy. For example, we can provide subsidies for R&D and recycling. Also, the technology of reuse, all these will be conducive to strengthening the concept of circular economy. We need to provide incentives to stimulate circulation so that we can further promote the concept of circular economy. So here comes my conclusion. So waste is a displaced resource. we want to make sure that they are actually resources and can be reused and recycled. Through innovative methods, we can turn waste into gold. Currently, our garbage recycling rate is 58%, ranking the third in the world. We believe that by 2022, it will reach 61%. Through our continuous effort, we believe that we will be able to reach the circular economy so that the industrial development, environmental protection can go hand in hand, so that we'll be able to reach zero waste, zero pollution, and sustainable regenerating cycle at home. So in the Mingfu Group, we have been actively devoted to developing the recycling technology. So we have worked with the government hand in hand to put these policy in place so that we can reach highly efficient circular economy. And we hope that we can work with the Australian government to share with us our experience so that we can reach the ultimate goal of zero waste. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tsai, for your sharing. Next, we're going to invite Mr. Paul Shi, Special Assistant to the Chairman of GD Recycling Industrial Company. But first, we're going to watch a short video clip.
When technology keeps changing our way of living, we know that we must keep advancing our services to help you evolve from a consumption-based linear economy to the circular economy that enables resource recycling to bring about a better future for mankind. Provider of total waste solutions. Since we entered the waste recycling business, we have been practicing environmental protection and innovation based on the idea, think green, go green. Over the last 2 decades or so, improving every day has become our challenge. With experience accumulated over time, we developed from an appliance recycling plant into a leading Class A waste disposal enterprise with 4 business departments. Through continual capacity upgrading, we redefine the value of recycling to create a better living environment for humankind, facing the desperate need for resource recovery and recycling across the globe. We provide turnkey solutions for recycling equipment. To fulfill the needs of individual customers, we select leaders from each department to form an elite team for each project. Based on the scale, access layout, equipment deployment, and workforce of a plant, we provide the most professional planning and recommendations. Continual evolution in pace with the times. With unrivaled capacity, we earn trust from customers. With professional and precision technology and insistence on legal compliance, we are enabled to walk into the world to provide services for over 20 countries in 5 continents. To us, proper treatment to recycle waste for reuse without causing pollution is a basic requirement. As a leading provider of total waste solutions, we must do things better with our capacity. As the wave of the circular economy rises, we understand that the customer's demand for waste treatment is no longer for just a waste cleaner, but a partner that can provide them with custom waste solutions. Based on our expertise, we integrate technology with the destruction process. To ensure no breaches of client confidentiality and provide safe and reliable waste disposal services. corporate culture and responsibilities. Happy employees bring satisfied customers. Therefore, we are committed to building a happy enterprise, developing the organizational cohesion of employees, equipping every employee with the energy to keep going, and making self-improvement of core competencies. We also spare no efforts in fulfilling our corporate responsibilities and implementing CSR with our core business to practice the circular economy. With the goal of zero waste, we turn waste today into resources for tomorrow to reduce natural resource depletion and environmental burdens. A trusted partner. We believe that green is the best origin for innovation. We reckon that helping customers finish the last mile of manufacturing in the circular economy is our mission. In the area of environmental protection, we always do our best. BRFGD, Recycling Industrial Company Limited.
It was a really wonderful video. Now we would like to invite Mr. Xi to share with us. You have 10 minutes.
The overall company intro, and then I will show a turnkey solution example from our customers, and then I'll do some dismantling illustration. Okay, next slide. So that's our factory located in Taichung County. Okay, so you've seen this photos in our video. Next slide. And we founded in '97. We just had a capital raise from 220 million NT to 330 million NT. And the new factory location will be in Changhua County. Okay, next slide. And that's some of our IP certificates over the years. Next. And we founded in '97, and in the meantime, we're trying to achieve the zero waste goal, and it's ongoing. Next slide. And that's our philosophy. Basically, it contains CSR, CO2 reduction, and sustainable management. Next one. Okay, and in the video, it mentioned that we had 4 business units. So basically, we recycle most of the large household appliances, which contains fridge, AC, TVs, and washers, and also the IT equipment, also the waste plastics, and the equipment turnkey solutions. Next one. Okay, so this is the sample that we customized for Sichuan Changhong Group, which is a pretty big corporate in China. Okay, next one. So as you may know that refrigerators are the most difficult items to process because it contains a lot of substances. And that is why I will show you a brief video clip later to show how this machine operates. Next one. And this equipment we customized for Changhong Corporate. It can process up to 1,000 units per day. And it takes about 15 to 20 people per production line. And it's low supply wastage and quite low maintenance cost. And there's no wastewater discharge, so it's quite environmental friendly. Next one. And it will have high quality derived materials like iron, copper, aluminum, and plastics, all well separated, which I will show you later in the photos. Next slide. So imagine this waste refrigerators like apples. We will actually dismantle the motors, compressor, and some other products first. And then we put them into the shredder. Next slide. So you can see the first process is the air separation. It will suck out the lighter substance. And then the heavier substance goes to the next process. Next slide. And we'll go through the magnetic separation, which will separate the iron items and non-ferrous and plastic items. Next one. And the last process is the eddy current separator. It will separate copper, aluminum, and plastics. And then we'll do the final collecting and bagging. Okay, next slide. So I will show you how this machine operates and monitors inside. Can you play the video? Okay. So these are some of the dismantled. Can you play this video? Yeah. So when the refrigerators get crushed inside the equipment, you can actually monitor from outside and check the temperature. If it goes too high, it will stop automatically. Okay, next slide. So I'll just show you some of the byproducts that's showing, like after this is the foam that after it gets materials sorting from, after we sort it from the equipment. So that's the foam. Next slide. Okay, and next slide. The foam after pressing, that's how it looks like. Okay. And the last terminal, the terminal station would be the dust collection. So everything will be collected properly in the dust collection equipment. Next slide. Okay, so that's our terminal. That's what terminal looks like. Okay, and next slide. And then I'm just gonna briefly show you guys how this dismantling illustration from the old CRT TV and the new LCD display. Okay, next slide. So imagine when we were kids, we see all these big and bulky CRT screens. Next slide. And that's the new technology, TFT LCDs. Next slide. So you see in CRT TVs, glass accounts for almost 70% of the materials, which is quite heavy. And most of the materials are not recycled. And next one, LCD monitors, plastics and iron accounts for over 70%. Okay. And what I have here, right here, this is the newer technology. We call this mini LED. It's from our customer. So in the future, you probably won't see any more like big bulky LCD TVs anymore. And next slide. So next slide. So basically, whichever products we're about to dismantle, you have to go through the manual dismantling, and then you go to the machine crushing. Next slide. So that's just our day-to-day operation, as you can see, for CRT TVs. Next slide. Okay, and more LCDs. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So, next slide. Okay. So, like I said, like the old LCD has a backlight of CCFL, which contains mercury. And then it has LEDs, but this is the mini LED, the newer technology in the future. Next slide. Okay, so that's how our system works like. We call it raw material separation system. Okay, and next slide. Okay, one last minute. Plastic separation. We have crushing. Next slide, air separation and water separation. And the very last one is static electricity, which purifies the higher yield rate of the waste plastics. Okay, next slide. And this is what we do. We refine all the precious metals from these e-waste items. Okay, next slide. And also the waste plastics. Next slide. The currently regulated items in Taiwan for these items under subsidy. Okay, last slide. So basically right now, here we talk about like all this circular economy, but in order to shift from linear economy to circular economy, I believe that we do need to rethink, redefine, and redesign instead of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Thank you.
Thank you for your sharing. And now we're going to invite our next speaker, Mr. Nick Zhao, Assistant Manager of Oriental Green Materials Limited and Far Eastern New Century Corporation, to give us the presentation. Before we begin, we also would like to play a video.
Using integrated technologies to maximize resource utilization and create sustainability through pollution reduction. Oriental Resources Development Limited. Lightweight, safe, hygienic, and durable PET bottles are the most popular beverage packaging today. Around 100,000 metric tons of PET are consumed to produce the 2.5 billion bottles annually in Taiwan. However, under the pioneering recycling program here, Taiwan boasts a staggering 97% PET recycle rate, with reuse up to 83.7%. And the driving force behind this green miracle is Oriental Resources Development Limited. Far Eastern New Century Corporation, FENC, parent company to Oriental Resources Development, is a major global producer in the polyester industry. FENC is fully committed to the slogan of 3R, reduce, recycle, and replace. And through the expansion in 2014, FENC has further contributed to the amount of PET bottles recycled in Taiwan and Japan, and increased the production capacity in both food-grade and fiber-grade recycled PET chips. Oriental Resources Development Limited, ORD, previously known as Taiwan Recycling Corporation, TRC, is the first PET bottle recycling plant in Taiwan. And since 2007, state-of-the-art technologies have been introduced to support production for bottle-to-fiber, bottle-to-bottle, and bottle-to-other packaging applications. Committed to the highest quality, up to several tens of thousands of tons of compressed PET bottle bales have been closely monitored from the first production stage. After the bottles are separated from the PET bottle bales, they will first be washed, followed by label removal and color sorting, before being shredded into PET flakes of less than 1 centimeter in diameter. These flakes will then be repeatedly washed, cleaned from impurities, dehydrated, before undergoing infrared optical screening to ensure purity in the final flakes. These will then undergo solid-state polymerization, Buehler technology, to obtain food-grade recycled PET chips used for other downstream applications. Bottle-to-fiber for environmental-friendly fibers. According to studies, a sport t-shirt could be produced from every 7 to 8 PET bottles. Material purity in recycled PET chips is the key to produce high-quality yarns, and from PET bale to yarn drawing, the making of recycled polyester is found to release 54.6% less carbon dioxide and use 40 to 85% less energy than that of virgin material. And through our strengthened vertical integration, chips are then used in our own fabric production lines to produce recycled polyester yarns to be marketed under Top Green. Its high-profile use in famous sportswear brands and World Cup football kit have since made Top Green a world-recognized material and one of Taiwan's brightest stars. Top Green PET yarns are growing at a steady 15% per year. Bottle-to-bottle for environmental-friendly PET bottles. ORD is the first company with bottle-to-bottle recycling technology in Taiwan. To ensure quality is in line with the strictest food safety standards, quality controls are implemented in its whole production process before new PET bottles are blow molded and filled. ORD now proudly holds food safety certifications from FDA, CFIA, and EFSA, and serves as a long-term partner to several major global beverage brands. Bottled to other packaging for environmental-friendly packaging material. ORD is the first commercial supplier in Asia to receive USA SCS sustainability certification. Using recycled PET pellets to manufacture packaging materials releases 36% less carbon dioxide emissions than using virgin PET, helps prevention of ozone depletion, and conserves water. Scratch-resistant, high-transparency films made from recycled PET are now applied in a wide array of products, earning its name as the best green packaging material. Storage boxes made from recycled PET chips and plastic pallets from recycled bottle cap material have both also enjoyed widespread commercial success. More than 90% of PET in every PET bottle is recoverable for PET fiber use, where 1 kilogram of PET bottles is equivalent to 0.8 liters of crude oil. Through steady long-term efforts, ORD has now received an impressive complement of international certifications in quality, environmental, and work safety. Our great accomplishments with products made from our recycled PET represent Taiwan's advanced technologies and show its intent in sustainability, spurring green movements, prompting all to engage in a more sustainable way. Oriental Resources Development, a global pioneer in PET bottle recycling.
What a wonderful video. I believe that we all look forward to the presentation from Nick. So now we'd like to invite our speaker, Nick Chow, to give us the presentation. Please keep your presentation in the time limit.
From Far Eastern and represent Oriental Green Material to make a brief introduction. Oriental Green Material is our subsidiary of Far Eastern, and Far Eastern is the mother company. And Far Eastern is founded in 1949. It's over 70 years and one of the biggest company groups in Taiwan. And Far Eastern is a parent company to develop and extend 10 major business across the different industrial, from upstream to downstream, like raw materials, petrochemical, and the salmon, and the real estate, and the polyester business, hotel, and the department store, and telecommunication, and banking, and education. And over 65,000 employees in our company good, and the assets is reached 92 billion USD dollar, and the annual revenue is over 24 billion USD dollars. The strength of the Far Eastern New Century is the integration from the upstream to the downstream. For example, the recycling business, we have our own washing plant to process PET bottle and convert the bottle bale to clean flakes and palletizing the high quality chips. And next step. And actually, Far Eastern is focusing on the polyester PET business and taking leading position worldwide, and especially the virgin PET chips. We are ranking worldwide top 3. Our annual capacity is 2 million tons in 1 year. And regarding the recycled PET, and we are also ranking the top 2 in worldwide, and our capacity is over 350,000 tons in a year. Yeah. Next slide. And we talk about the PET collection rate, and we need to mention that the Wall Street Journal report that Taiwan is the genius of garbage disposal, especially PET. And in Taiwan, and our collection rate is very high. It's reached 95%. And all achievement is need to contribute to our efforts of the EPA. And regarding our recycling plant, Oriental Green Material, that is in Taiwan, there's 100,000 tons PET in Taiwan. Oriental Green Material can process over 50,000 tons PET in the years and convert to high quality flakes. Next slide. And let me introduce the Oriental Green Material, the histories. And Oriental Green Material is founded in 1988 and it's over 30 years. And the original owned by the 3 companies. And it's what in initial that was very tough and difficult for business in early times. And in 2026, and we all Far Eastern took the 100% shares and running the operation by ourselves and in 2010, and we start to develop the high quality products, bottle to bottle, the high food grade chips. And the process this PET bottle to the clean flex and apply in food packaging. In 2016, we opened the second line in Guanyin, and in last year, so we renamed our company name to the Oriental Green Materials from Oriental Development. Next slide. And the Oriental Green Material is the biggest recycling plant in Taiwan, and we convert the PET bottle to the clean flakes and to provide a very high quality flake to Far Eastern to do the palletizing. And the quality of the recycled PET is in compliance with the standard of the FDA and the EFSA. Next slide. And the recycled PET is not only for the food packaging, but also can be the non-food packaging like a shampoo bottles and the textile application and the injection products. There are strengths of the recycled PET. First of all, the PET, the recycling system is very mature and easy to recycle. And the second, there's sufficient feedstock compared to other plastic. And third, normally this comes from the PET food packagings and less pollution and no coating in the food packaging. So if we can take advantage of the PET, recycled PET and convert to the high quality raw material again, we can save our environment and reduce the waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhao, for your sharing. We will now proceed to bilateral talks. The moderator for the session is Deputy Director of the Center for Green Economy at CIER, Dr. Lin Junxu. If you have any questions, please leave your questions at the chat room, and we're going to answer your questions in this session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chun Su Lin. I'm the research fellow and also deputy director of Center for Green Economy of CIER. And you probably wonder why I'm here instead of Dr. Wen. We're supposed to have Dr. Wen here to do the moderating, but due to her very busy schedule, so I'm here as a substitute. Sorry if you are here looking for Dr. Wen, please come to CIER tomorrow. Okay, and today we have heard of many good, excellent presentations from both sides. And to facilitate this dialogue, since nowadays people are too shy, so I made some arrangement for the dialogue. I will ask the experts in Australia to give your comments and thoughts or questions to our Taiwanese friends, Taiwanese experts here first. And then Taiwanese experts can respond to your questions, your comment. And reversely, following that, we would like to invite our Taiwanese experts to give some thoughts, comments, questions to our experts in Australia, and we can have responses from Australian side. And after that, as our master of ceremony already announced, if our audience online have some questions, you are very welcome to do so. In the chat box of our WebEx platform. and I will deliver the questions later and for our distinguished guests, distinguished speakers. Okay, so let's start with our Australian side. Why don't we start with Gail? Okay.
So you're asking me a question, or am I to read it myself? Sorry, I'm confused. Are you asking me a question?
I asking for questions from you.
Oh, you want a
Sort,
question from
yeah.
me? Sorry, I'm confused. Sorry about that. I actually thought the presentations from the presenters from Taipei were fantastic, and I was very curious about the policy settings that exist in Taiwan, because it sounded very like the first speaker had a lot of the challenges or thoughts about policy, extended producer responsibility design that we have in Australia. So I was curious what policy settings exist in Taiwan, because you clearly are innovating very well with good plastics. So I was curious what policy settings had led to that.
Okay, thanks for the question. And probably next from Marcus.
Yeah, thank you. I would just be interested how we can better get a connection between Taiwan and Australia, and how can we learn from each other. It looks like we're very strong in policy setting, but in the technology front, it looks like Taiwan is leading. And most importantly, how do we get the community along with this? Because if we want to be a circular economy, we have to make sure we do separation at the source. People understand the collection systems, and they have to be willing to be using recycled content in materials.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. And how about Ruben?
Yes, this one's to Nick Chow from Oriental Green Materials Limited. My question will be, what government initiatives do you think help the most in getting such a high recovery rate for plastics in Taiwan? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a question from Australian side. Gail, you want to say something more?
No, I
Okay.
thought there were
All
three
right.
great questions.
Okay, thank you. So there are some questions about policies and also how we can go together for another sustainable future. And I would like to invite our good friends from business side first, because they are receiving the policies directly from Taiwanese government, and also they have a lot of experiences to working with the colleagues outside of Taiwan. So who will go first? Paul, how about you? You have some idea to them?
I received the question. What is the biggest challenge to expand the business in Asia Pacific region? FGD has a lot of customers from worldwide, and currently we don't have the access to AP region, strongly due to the licensing issue and policy protection. Because in different countries, they do have different bylaws. So for example, in Taiwan, I'm pretty sure like all the experts here, we all got the some sort of license by Taiwan EPA. But when we move to another country, I mean, it's easy to remember the phrase SIT. S for subsidy, I for incentive, T for technology. Technology comes after incentive and subsidy. If you don't have a strong subsidy program or incentives, it's hard for the qualified recyclers to go overseas and invest, because it's easy to buy land. Right now, look at QE. It's not hard to finance. I mean, everybody can finance and get money, but then once you set up the plant, where are all these waste coming from? You need a strong collection methodology. So that's the way I see it. And also, when we evaluate a new market overseas, again, we need to make sure that the government is with us, because I actually participated a few seminars in Vietnam and Indonesia before. A lot of experts call this informal sector, but I don't really like hearing the term informal sector. Most of the time, they are already doing what they are doing, like recycling, just that they don't have the access to the permits or the license. So I rather call them unlicensed sector. Sometimes they have the strong recycling capability, but then in order for them to apply for the license, it takes forever. So I'm not sure how the policy works in Australia. I mean, if we are ready to invest, but it takes maybe 2 to 3 years to get the license, then I'm pretty sure the incentive will get lower. So I mean, it's give and take. So for every single decision we make, it's about, finding the balance. Thank you.
Thanks. Jimmy, you want to give some comments and thoughts for our Australian friends over there?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jimmy. I thought we already have the 3 questions, so I'm preparing those answers for the questions. So this was the new questions. Okay. Yes, we do investment in Australia already, and I think we are only one company in Australia to do the recycling stuff. So in my opinion, if you want to do investment to Australia, it's better to be a friend to the Australian teams, which is Brent and Lillian and Lawrence. They will give you all the information you needed, which is the lands information, which area, which industry you can go into and to do the market survey, or any the regulation of the Australia states, because different state has a different policy to let you to have the the benefit. If you those the for example, the plastic is very lot among in Australia. In my opinion, last time I went to Australia, I went to a supermarket. I saw the 2 of the milk bottle in the refrigerators. So that's a lot. The milk bottle is cheaper than the waters. So that is a opportunity, business opportunity. So if you want to do the investment in Australia, you better to get the information, which state, which part and which the area what they really needed. Like we do the investment in Perth already, and Perth they are very focused on the plastic recycling. Because they had the different 2 or 3 collector already, but they don't have the recycler. So that's why we are the recycler, and they are very welcome us to do the investment in theirs. So if you want to do the investment, which is in Australia, you can ask in the Australian teams and to get the information before you go. And maybe you need to do to find out the local partners. You also can asking for the Australian teams. I will be happy to provide my experience to the Australian team to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Jimmy is the CEO of Meaningful Group, okay, in Taiwan. And Nick, you want to respond?
I respond to the Rubin's questions, whether the Taiwan's policy to support Taiwan recycle to recycle the plastic or other recycled materials. There is the 4-in-1 recycling program in Taiwan, and the beverage company need to pay the disposal fee to the Taiwan government. And the Taiwan government would use this fund to support or provide this subsidy to the collectors and other requirements. And they provide the tools collector and encourage them to recycle or collect and also do the sorting the materials, then deliver to the reclaimer. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So now next from our side, okay, anyone want to raise questions for our Australian friends? Front stage. Or comment or thoughts? No, nothing here. Okay, Paul, Jimmy, or Nick? Okay. Yeah, that's why. Okay, okay, Paul, please.
In Australia right now, there are like 6 states and 2 territories, right? And because population-wise, the size of population of Australia and Taiwan are quite similar, but the land size, is a big difference. Like, how do you make sure all the policies, for example, if I do go invest and we do get the license under the help of the local partner under joint venture, how can you ensure that all the PET bottles, all those e-waste are being properly collected? Is there any way to monitor this? Because in Taiwan, as you saw in the video of FGD, in Taiwan, there are like GPS track, like GPS track. So you can find out, for example, like if this e-waste comes out from my customer, from the e-waste makers. So in every single time we go for the disposal, on the sheet it has the weight, time, location, and everything. So to make sure to describe like how much e-waste has been collected and how much e-waste has been, eventually once you dismantle them, recycle them, how much goes to landfill, incineration, etc. In Australia, is there, such system that, goes monitoring beyond this scope? Thank you.
Marcus, can you comment on e-waste? I can comment on other material, but not e-waste.
So every state has systems in place to monitor and collect data where the material is generated. There's also collection points. So the e-waste is a voluntary system. Actually, it's a co-voluntary system with the federal government and the state governments and industry. And e-waste is collected from local government depots, from big e-waste generators, shops and shopping centers. And this material has to be processed, brought to a processor, and is dismantled and recycled already. So I think your concern about the collection systems and the tracking is not a big issue. The matter of licensing is even less of an issue, because a lot of these processes, for example, plastic processing, is not covered by a Department of Environment license in a lot of cases. If it's clean plastics with low contamination rates, then you have to obviously abide by the fire regulations and other regulations, but it's not so much covered by licensing. And if there's a license applicable, it's not a big issue to actually get these licenses organized.
I would say that's for Western Australia. That's not necessarily the case for New South Wales and other states. So I think it's really important to understand what jurisdiction you want to invest in, for all those reasons that you said, that we need to be sure, because we do in Australia, the majority of states treat it like a waste material, and there are obligations as to what you can do. They're not insurmountable, but there are some licenses required for certain types of facilities. I guess back to comments about the transportation, other plastic types, Yes, we've got different states do transport tracking, and we're looking at even some states are going to registering of transportation of materials. So, whilst we don't have a standard national system, we definitely have a very close eye on anything that's considered to be a waste and track it generally in different ways across each jurisdiction.
All right, thank you, Paul, Marcus, and Gail. And any question from our side here, Jimmy or Nick? Okay.
I have a question because we are PET producers, and if we want to invest in Australia, if there is any incentives for the investors, or because we are focused on the PET business. The first question is if there's any incentive, and second, if how we secure the feedstock. The recycled PET bill. Yeah.
You might want to ask your government colleague about the incentives. But state by state, we do significant amount of grants, and which are a competitive process. We also have funding opportunities such as the CFC, which is climate related funding, as well as ARENA. So there are a number of funding sources that will assist in Australia. But the vast majority of PET that I'm aware of is sold on is traded, so publicly traded, particularly container deposit scheme. Others, we do have a number of increasingly what we call integrated facilities or companies such as Visi, which is a packager as well as a recycler. So we're seeing a lot more of that. And we've seen recently, for example, beverage invest in a remanufacturing. So we're starting to see a lot more supply chain integration. I guess, and that's one way that people are guaranteeing their feedstock by taking it and also remanufacturing it. So it's generally publicly traded material is how you get the feedstock. Marcus, did you want to add?
Thanks, Gail. Yes, so there has been funding allocated by federal and state governments in the last 12 months. So there's a limited opportunity, I think, for PET processing, because I think the market is saturated. I don't know about Queensland yet, but I think in Victoria there's a big plant being built. In Western Australia there's a plant being built. In New South Wales there's a plant being built. And there's already a plastics processing facility in Adelaide, in South Australia. So I think there's limited volumes available. There's no such body as you have in Taiwan, that there is like extended producer responsibility and there's funding available to subsidize your operation. So if you want to have plastic material or any material for recycling, you just have to act as a competitor in the market and fight for the feedstock.
I'll just add on to that, is that the material recovery facilities, they have the majority of the plastics which recyclers purchase for, and they're all on very short-term tender bases. So it used to be maybe 2 months or 3 months, but they've gone down. Now it's maybe on a 1 month tender basis, and they're usually awarded just to the highest bidder. So yeah, like other speakers said, there's not a lot of incentives. There are grants, some are state-based and some are federal-based, but it is a competitive environment for materials. And HDP and PET were the first pickings for facilities trying to secure these and developing capacity in different states. But there aren't a lot of solutions for mixed plastics, especially on the East Coast where there's the bulk of the material.
I'll just add to that as well, because and you saw it in previous slides, there's 3.4 million tons of plastic generated every year in Australia, and 4% is recycled. If you look at the PET and the HDPE from the households and from the drinking containers, that's only a very small stream. That is maybe up to 140 or 150,000 tons per annum, Australia-wide. So the difference between the PET and HDPE, which might be very clean materials, but what about all the industrial plastics and the hard plastics and the PPs and the PS? So there is no processing capacity for that in Australia. So we keep focusing on the PET from the water bottle and the HDPE from the milk bottles here. But there's all these other millions of tons of plastics that should be recycled as well.
I might touch on the investment incentive angle, if that's all right. And thank you very much, Gail, for redirecting that one my way. So, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, there are a number of generous incentives designed to encourage private sector investment alongside states and territories in the establishment of additional new capacity into circular economy in Australia. You could summarise them in two ways. One is a grant program, so essentially a gift of capital to make the business case stack up more favourably for the private investor. So it reduces the amount of capital investment required to establish a new facility. Secondly, and probably in fewer instances, the government may take an equity position, and we see that through the CEFC program. If the profile of the circular economy activity matches what the CEFC is looking for, then there's an option where they might take a co-funding position. So what we've seen from past experience, a project of around $50 million would likely attract a grant investment of $10, $15 million. That's the kind of equation we're looking at. So there's quite generous incentives available. If anyone in the room is interested, we're happy to provide some more information.
Okay.
If I could just add to that what was just said by Ben and also Marcus, like we all focus very much on PP, PET and HDPE and a little bit more on polypro. But there is a significant amount of plastic that is not being recovered, particularly in the industrial, that is of high value. And I think the WA plant that Ruben's working at is looking at car materials. There is so much opportunity, and you clearly from the technology you just showed, and I'm not aware of anyone turning plastic into fibre in Australia. So there is definitely opportunities away from, I guess, what we call the low-hanging fruit of the PET and HDPE that has definitely not been charted here. And the Clean Energy Finance Corp that was just referred to is about assisting with funding facilities that address carbon and carbon emissions. And you very much understand that with the presentations you just gave. So there is absolutely opportunity outside of those sort of low-hanging fruit in Australia for sure.
Okay, thank you for the information shared from Australian side and also Brent. And we do receive 2 questions from internet, okay, from the platform. And the first question is from Warren Overton of Australia and New Zealand Recycling Platform. And his question is to Paul, okay? And what process do you use to manage BFR PUP in e-waste plastic? BFR POP, PUP.
In terms of technology, like we do the sorting manually first by labor, and then once we put them on the conveyor, we do the crushing. Okay, and then we do I show in the slides, we do the air separation and water separation. And the last process, we do the static electricity. We try to discharge them at different voltage to improve the purity of the products. And eventually we make them into pellets. And right now we only focus on PPE and ABS and PS, majorly from the household appliances like AC, fridge, and TVs, and that's what we recycled.
Yeah, actually, there's a question also collected before this event, and the question is very similar. As plastics from e-waste, and that's we call ITE-PCR, I guess. And what do you do with that right now, currently?
We are applying, because in terms of PCR, each type and each product, you need to apply for a different PCR certificate. And right now, we only have the black PP from the CRT TVs. So if you want to have another product, you need to apply for different PCR items again.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And now we have another question from Candy of E3. Her question is, if Australia has no manufacturers and also all products are imported, I didn't know that until now. Okay, and when you have a secondary materials, how are you going to do with that? And to achieve the roadmap of circular economy Australia by 2030. Okay.
Just to clarify, we do have some onshore manufacturing. We just don't have as much as I guess we used to. And what we've seen with government in the remanufacturing of plastics, as we said earlier, we've had that significant injection in the last 12 months towards moving the remanufacturing of the plastic onshore. The next pace to meet the circular economy is obviously that market development pace and having materials and products made from recycled content that are bought back and used, so that community engagement, that behavioral pace, the looking at systems so that they're different, so we've got more reuse systems, looking at product stewardship schemes that have the generators meeting the cost of some of this infrastructure, particularly the collection and the design, so that we actually diminish our use of virgin material is going to be key in successfully achieving the 2030 roadmap. So we've got a lot of opportunity / challenges ahead of us.
Okay, Marcus, you want to respond to this question, or Robin?
Yes, of course. We're looking at a lot of new products that are being made out of secondary raw materials. And a good example is in Victoria last week, sound protection walls were actually installed next to the freeway. And typically in the past, they were made of concrete panels, but now they actually made plastic panels. So we're looking for new markets, new applications, and all these products can be manufactured here. I mean, all fantastic products have always come out of Taiwan. When I know when I was growing up, everything that I had in toys-wise, always said made in Taiwan. So thank you very much for that. But it's all about currently, finding markets here, finding local, establishing local collection systems with clean materials, or have separation processes. Then make sure we have local manufacturing that provide local products for local projects. Globalization is good, but I think we have to look for more local solutions. And a good example is the issues now in the supply chain what's happening. I mean, you can't get certain pieces of equipment or because parts are not available, and partly is due maybe for ordering, but also shipping costs. Shipping costs have gone up 800%. So the realization is in Australia that for simple products, we should look for local recycled content material that we can locally manufacture, create local jobs, and have local applications. I think that's the focus of every state and territory and the federal government in Australia. But we need partners with technology, and I think that's where Taiwan comes in, because it is obvious, because we haven't had that manufacturing base here, we haven't had that processing and the technology here.
I'll just add on onto that. Right. Sure. So initially, we thought that all the pelletized material that we'd produce from our WA facility we'd send to customers in Taiwan or Japan, but we've been inundated with requests from a lot of onshore manufacturers, as even though we might import a lot, our recovery rates are not terrific. It's only maybe 5% here in WA. If we recover the 5%, that's actually enough to keep all the plastics here locally in Western Australia, as there is enough capacity to manufacture here in WA. So we believe that there doesn't have to be a lot of additions to onshore manufacturing here for plastic products. We can just incorporate the pelletized material with onshore manufacturers as they are now. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And I really believe the circular economy should be at the international level. It's not somehow it's very restricted if we want to do everything domestically. Okay, and we did collect some questions before this event from our participants, and I would like to deliver them to our speakers today. Okay, I already passed that question to Paul, so I will skip him. Sorry, and my questions to Gail is about the status of the waste export ban. Okay, that started earlier this year. What's the status now, and how do you monitor that? And in addition to bilateral trade and investment, how Australia and Taiwan can collaborate on like fundamental research for circular economy, in technology, business model, and policies, etc. Your thoughts, please. Thank you.
As I mentioned before, we've had the mixed plastics can no longer go offshore as of July this year. So we've had a lot of single stream plastics operators gain licenses. I think there's 29 operators now licensed for that. And obviously the high value PET, HDPE is still leaving our shores to a point. It has created a challenge with, whilst the money has been flowing in from government and greatly appreciated, I think one of your panelists talked about it takes 2 to 3 years to get a license in Taiwan, not that different, or to get a development in Australia. So we've got just a bit of a challenge as we transition. So that is definitely underway, and I guess with a very big change next year. So we're seeing a significant investment towards plastic facilities in Australia at present. I can't remember the next question. Taiwan. So I think some of the technology that you've shown us today, and just back to the earlier comments about other plastic stream investment, and we are really we've currently got a review of e-waste being led by the federal government as a task force, because to be frank, we haven't done that well, and we have relied on a lot of exporting. So there are massive opportunities, and Warren spoke earlier, and I think he may have mentioned this, massive opportunity with e-waste plastic in Australia, because we've seen one of the largest operators in that field recently struggle financially. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity for Taiwan investment, knowledge, research in Australia in the sort of non-PET HDPE area. So I would really encourage a closer look at those. So hopefully I answered your questions then.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And
Thank
to
you.
Marcus, Australia has a similar population size to Taiwan, but your land mass is about 200 times bigger, so which makes business operation relatively complicated for Taiwanese industry. So the question is, how would you recommend for Taiwanese to start business with Australia in circular economy? For example, in which states, regions, through which channels, on what subjects?
Yeah, Australia is a big country. I'm from a very small country as well, originally from the Netherlands, which I think, it's much smaller than Taiwan. And it is amazing how big the country is, Australia. But the distance also generates protection and distinct markets. So it is not always a threat. The other thing is in Australia is that the transport network is fantastic. There's railways, and I've been to Taiwan, and I know your transport network is fantastic as well. So it's quite easy to transport material from the east coast to the west coast, and from the south to the north. So there's rail, and it's not that expensive. How to do business in Australia? I would think a coordinated approach would be best, and Austrade is an organization that could help you with it. Best is to get together with technology providers and service providers and work out what areas we need help with, and which is tire recycling and pyrolysis and plastic recycling and e-waste. Paper, cardboard, all kinds of technologies for waste management, even collection systems, and even services, circular economy, training. Maybe the best way to start is to connect with the Australian parties through webinars. So organize events like this with technology providers and service providers in Taiwan, and get industry involved here. And that could be done through Gail as a CEO of the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Association. And there's another organization called the Waste Management Association of Australia. There's ACOR, the Australian Councils of Recyclers. So there's many associations, industry associations, that could actually help you with this to connect. But it's best to do it coordinated, for example, through an Austrade. The other thing is, what I would think is local representation. You need to have someone on the ground here, and I know traveling is difficult now, so you need a bridgehead in Australia that can then help you with developing the market.
Okay, thank you. So local partner is very important. Yeah, okay, to Robin. And the question is, as a good partner of a Taiwanese investor, and how do you see the advantage as well as disadvantages of Taiwanese companies have in the practice of plastic or related industries in Australia? And how would be the key steps for Taiwanese companies to find suitable local partners, and how to be successful in Australia?
Cool. So for the first question, Taiwan, they have decades more of experience with dealing with a lot of these recyclable materials, especially plastics. In Australia, we're definitely in our infancy, so Taiwan Connect as a technology solution provider for us. And to set up in Australia, it's not really possible to travel at the moment. So the best would be to find a local partner, someone that'll be on the ground. Austrade, they are terrific in connecting different parties, and there's also a lot of different peak bodies here in Australia. I'm very WA focused in my knowledge, but across Australia there's also the Australian Council of Recyclers, ACOR, and there's also the WMR here in WA. So it will be best to work through these peak bodies to find proactive partners locally, and especially for Austrade, they can really help you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. And to 大福和 Resources Regeneration Corporation or Meaningful Group, either to Mr. Tsai or to Jimmy. And the question is, as your company is an international corporation operating business in many countries, from your perspectives, what is the uniqueness of Australia that's different from the rest of the world, especially in terms of circular economy or plastics?
All right, thank you for asking. For these questions, I think, in my opinion, the Australia, there has only the collector. So I think they need a recycler in all of the Australia. So that is an opportunity, and it's different than the other country, because Australia before 2 years, two years ago, I think those they do most of the items they ship out and export to other country to process. And in Australia, only collecting those items. That's it. So I think if you want to do the things in Australia, it's a good time to be a recycler in Australia. That's my opinion for the first question. For these questions, thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is to Nick. Okay, as Far Eastern Group is an internationally influential company with very high-end technologies for plastic recycling, such as you mentioned, the long bottle-to-bottle technology, which is long commercialized already. Okay, what would be the key to well integrate recycling practice with manufacturing? Since you have two roles, you are a big manufacturer in fabric industry and also food industry, etc. And at the same time, you are also a very good recycler. And how do you interconnect them with each other and to come out a closed loop economy? So you can use the secondary materials by yourselves, etc. So that's a very interesting question to me also. And another question from the participant is, comparing with other new southbound countries, what do you see the potential collaboration with Australia in all aspects, not only in recycling, but also in manufacturing? And we know you have a lot of business in Southeast Asia, in Japan, and why not Australia at this moment? Okay, so two questions.
Respond to the first question, that's what would be the key to well integrate the recycling process. I think there are three key factors to do the successful integration. The first of all is we secure the raw material, and the second is the supplies, well supplied, and the third is the demand. We need to promote our product and to collaborate with our end customers. So first of all, we need to, I think the most important is to secure the raw material, as I asked our Austria team, and the recycling industry is very different to other business. We need to secure the raw material first, and also the recycled material is various and so different, and sometimes included a lot of impurity. And the second, we need to enhance our technologies and modify our technology and process, and to produce the recycled raw material. And finally, when you produce and very world products, and you need to found a customer. Otherwise, you have a lot of the product, but you cannot sell it. So we also work with the brand owner and to promote the circular economy and to sell the recycled PET. Yeah. And the second question is about compare with the other new southbound countries, and how can we deal with our Australia teams. And I will express my experience, because in Southeast Asia, they are focusing on the low-end products and some commodities. But in Taiwan, so we got a high technology and a very innovative technologies. So I think we can work with the Australia team to develop some specialty and with a high added values product. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see more questions coming out from the internet, but we do not have too much time, so I would like to conduct the last questions to all participants today. And the question is, to better develop a circular economy of plastics, both at the domestic and national levels. And based on your experiences and observations, what's your advice or suggestion to Taiwan for government or for industries? What should they do? Okay, governmental side and industrial side. I think this question is to our Australian friends also. and also our experts in Taiwan here. Okay, so who will go first? Yeah, Marcus?
I'm happy to go first. First, I would like us to share our experiences because we are coming from this at two different angles. You already have an established system in place, extended producer responsibility, technology, and now expanding into different markets where recycled content or secondary raw materials can be used. We are coming from a different angle in Australia. We are looking at cost of landfill to go up. We're looking at banning materials from landfill, for example, e-waste. So we're still at the first steps of looking at a circular economy. And circular economy is not about better recycling. Circular economy is all about rethinking, and it was in one of the presentations before, and changing these three R's from reduce, reuse, recycle to rethink and redesign. So it is very important for us to tell you, for you to tell us, I should say, that if you want to properly recycle, how do we redesign products, and how do we redesign collection systems, and how do we redesign our pre-sorting that we currently do, so you can actually make a proper product out of it that can be used as a secondary raw material. So we have to start the dialogue, and we have to make sure we connect and we learn from each other and build on each other's experience.
Thank you, Marcus. Paul, please.
Marcus, in addition to what you just mentioned, redesign, take a look at these PET bottles. Because Nick, they're the expert of PETs. I'm not sure in Australia, can you enforce the makers to make this plastic cover? Because this one's easier, not much glue. But sometimes the manufacturers, they have like from different countries, same brand, but different country, they probably have different specs. So some of them may have glues, and that will reduce the recycling rate and yield rate significantly. I'm pretty sure you're all aware of it. So I'm just saying that if Australian government can really enforce this law to make this, but I think it's quite difficult because you probably cannot have that sort of regulations.
We're a signatory also in some ways, and I'm not sure if Taiwan is, to Ellen MacArthur Foundation, New Plastic Pact, and they're looking at all of those aspects, the European Plastic Pact, and that's exactly the stuff we need to do, right? So Australia has recently set up the AusPac Plastic Pact, but unfortunately is driven a lot by packages as opposed to necessarily looking at, to justify poor packaging design. But we need to work together as those who are at the end of the supply chain who need to drive that design change, because if we don't, we know that 10% of that bottle is a contaminant as it stands between the lid and the label. So how can anyone make ISRI standards, to be honest? So we need to, be unified as an industry, I think globally, to talk about, we need to change this and not let packages tell us what's recyclable, because we know what's recyclable. And drive that change. So, I completely agree with Marcus. I've seen some terrific stuff this evening that, it would be great to showcase, what opportunities are out there and start a dialogue. We do have a dialogue with the, as my association as the PEAK, we do have one with the European Circular Economy Network as well. So there's opportunities to talk and start making those networks and learn from you guys, because I do think in some ways you are further down the plastic path than we are, definitely in e-waste and definitely with PET to fibre. And I actually think that one of your companies might be supplying PET fibre for insulation in Adelaide. I came across that recently, recycle PET. So, there's lots of opportunities.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. How about Robin? Do you have any
I'll
comments?
just add on from what Paul said.
All right.
That's
Nick or Jimmy, you want to give your final words?
Okay. I think for our government, I think they should group the business development teams to find out how the other waste plastic can do for the solutions, so we can easily to collecting everyone's knowledge to deal with, because right now there's a lots of the plastic cannot be reused or recycled. So you can only do is dump it or you burn it. I think that's the wasting the well, it's really wasting the items. So I think we should carry those different the business teams, and the government should lead it, and lead us to other country, or there's maybe the fundings to let the business those business can pay more attention, the more times to find out how the plastic can do, because I think those many of the plastic can just everyone's like a post company, they only store inside their company, in the factory. They can't do anything, just leave it. And like us, we also do that. We leave those waste plastic in my factory. So I think it's better to carry in everyone has the same problems, and then let's see how we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Nick?
Finally, I want to promote the eco-friendly packaging design, because as the PET producer, we face a lot of production problem like the label or color bottles. So we encourage the government or the beverage company to design the food packaging with the transparent colors, because transparent color can be recycled and back to the high quality and the high value added. But if the colors or your bottle something that they cannot be the high quality again. So I would encourage maybe Australia or Taiwan government to set the standard to restrict the usage of the color bottle. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, Brent, you want to say something more?
I might just make a few closing remarks, and also to pick up on a few remarks made by other members of the panel. In terms of where there are specific opportunities in Australia, because the commissioning agencies for this work are all Australian governments, they operate very open and transparent systems. So there are open tenders where they will provide the specifications and other fundamental details required to understand, is this a relevant opportunity for a company in Taiwan? Now, there might just be a piece of these projects where it's just the supply of a machine or the supply of a technology that's only relevant. So I think to be ready to take advantage of opportunities, it's networking events and engagements such as today is very vital. International borders in Australia are likely to be opened up in the very near future, and I would hope that would afford everybody here from Taiwan an opportunity to visit Australia and to go to events and meet people like we have on the screen here. That's one way to stay informed of where those connection opportunities are. I think, lastly, what I think would be exciting that Australia could learn from Taiwan is on that downstream application of where we can use those recycled plastics. Gail mentioned insulation, fibre insulation, for example. The Australian community loves to see stories like that. The Australian community generally were shocked when they realised the extent that we weren't dealing with these problems. We are equally delighted when we can find innovative ways to solve problems like this. That's something Australians really take to their heart. And Taiwan, being a very industrialised economy, I'm sure will have many innovative, exciting ideas on how to repurpose plastics into new products and new applications. And that is one area I think there's some really exciting opportunity potentially.
Okay, thank you, Brent. And time is up. So I would like to close this session by giving our big thanks to our distinguished panelists and presenters today, both in Australia and Taiwan. And thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much to all panelists. We believe that this bilateral talk contributes to mutual understanding, and we look forward to more cooperation. Next, we're very pleased to invite Dr. Eugene Lee, Director of the Office of the APO Director for the ROC, China Productivity Center, to share with us. He's going to talk about prospects for the ASEAN market under the cooperation between Taiwan and Australia. Please welcome Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much. Honorable host, distinguished guests, speakers and participants, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude and deep appreciation to our host today, EPA Taiwan and Australian office in Taipei. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank my longtime partner, CIER, and also like to thank my colleagues at CPC for their hard working to make this event possible. Now I'm going to share with you our experiences in recycling and circular economy of plastics in APO member countries. Next slide, please. Since most of our projects are conducted under the scheme of an international organization called APO, I would first briefly introduce the organization and the Center of Excellence program. And then I will share with you some success stories on promoting circular economy in ASEAN countries. Next, please. Now, let me tell you about APO, Center of Excellence on Green Productivity. Next, please. The Asian Productivity Organization, also known as APO, is a non-profit, non-political international organization comprising 21 member countries in the Asia-Pacific region. It was established in 1961 to enhance productivity in the region through mutual cooperation. Its mission is to contribute to sustainable social economic development of the Asia-Pacific region by enhancing productivity, and its vision is to promote more inclusive, innovation-led productivity growth. Next. The APO has been promoting the concept and practices of green productivity since 1994 to respond to the needs of the sustainability and environmental protection. APO has begun to promote green productivity by planning many seminars, workshops, training courses, and exchange programs. It was in 2013 that the APO designated ROC Taiwan as Center of Excellence on Green Productivity, also known as COE on GP, with its mission to address the global sustainable development trends and display the advantages of green and sustainable technologies. We are now actively working with 7 member countries of APO, which are India, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Next, please. One of the most significant achievements of COEGP is to provide technical expert services to member countries. To provide technical services to address the needs of member countries, we first share Taiwan's industry and experience so that we can build the foundation of mutual trust. And then we develop close partnerships with our counterparts in member countries. We also promote international industry collaboration through public-private partnerships. And in the end, we can expand the so-called new southbound market or emerging market. There are 5 areas we focus under the COEGP scheme, which are green productivity, resource recycling, green energy, waste management, and circular economy. Next, please. Now, I would like to share with you some of the success stories of APO Green Technical Service teams. Our cooperation with Thailand is focused on the new business model for resource recycling. One of the company we work closely with is Dafeng Environmental Technology. Dafeng is a leading company in waste management and resource recycling industry in Taiwan. With the help from the APO Green Technical Service team, Dafeng successfully invested in Bangkok, Thailand. It established a recycling station in Bangkok in 2020. The location is nearby Suttison MRT station with space of 960 square meters. They try to build a convenience store-like front desk. This new business model is cleaner and tidier than conventional ones. The business model is a brand new one in Thailand, and they expect a 3-year payback period. Next, please. And our cooperation with Malaysia is focused on energy storage system, and we mainly work closely with Malaysia Productivity Corporation and Green Tech Malaysia, which is a state-run company in Malaysia. The APO Green Technical Service team assisted in the developing of a cooperation platform to link between the Taiwanese company called STC International and Green Tech Malaysia. By the end of 2019, we started our plan on assisting the design of a solar energy storage integration system in Green Tech's Green Office building. After a small amount of sampling, the demo sites will be built in the future with the hope for energy storage market expansion and create new green business opportunities in Malaysia. Next, please. Last but not the least, I would like also to share with you some of our success stories with other member countries in Southeast Asia. The first one is India. We worked with MPC India on promoting wastewater treatment technologies. And for Indonesia, we built a solar PV system in Sorong Technical Training Center. We also built a solar mini-grid system in West Papua and organized several skill training courses in Indonesia. In Laos PDR, the COEGP also collaborated with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce to implement an APO demo project in which a pilot solar power system was built on the rooftop of a government agency in 2015. The former APO Secretary General, Maria Mano, also attended the launching ceremony in early 2016. In the Philippines, as our participants may know very well, there are over 7,000 offshore islands, and most of them are short of electricity power supply. In 2015, the team provided technical expert services to the National Power Corporation of the Philippines to plan to set up a PV diesel hybrid power plant at Limasawa Island as a pilot project. And in Vietnam, we helped and collaborated with the Vietnam government to set up a LED smart street light pilot project in Vietnam. And last year, when all the world were experiencing the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, we successfully implemented a virtual observational study mission with MPC Malaysia under the support of CIER and EPA Taiwan. And so far, I've shown you how we leveraged the resources from APO and Taiwan government. And we worked closely with member countries to showcase our counterparts, the advanced green technologies and equipments from Taiwan. I would like to wrap it up here, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Director Lin, for your sharing. So our bilateral meeting is about to come to an end. And last but not least, we would like to invite Deputy Director Lin Jinshu of the CIER to give us the concluding remarks.
Thank you very much. It's coming to the end of our event today. Actually, the Australian office in Taipei and CIER has been working together for quite a long time on circular economy issues. And we always have very great dialogues and collaborations together. And today, plastics is only a small topic in circular economy. And we will continue our collaboration in the future and to expand to other topics such as e-waste, food waste, etc. And at different levels, not just only in business level, we also like to expand our spectrum to like a policy discussion level and also research level. And so I think that's it. And I wish you all the best and have a good evening today. Thank you.
Thank you to Deputy Director Lin. And once again, thank you to the participation from all of the participants. So our bilateral meeting between Taiwan and Australia is now concluded. If you need the slides, please click on the link in the WebEx chat room.